My 34th birthday ended with a legal folder sliding across mahogany and my father screaming for me to get out. The room didn't gasp in horror. They applauded, like spectators at an execution they'd paid to witness. I walked into the snow and found a black envelope on my windshield. Inside was a deed to a private island worth $95 million. My family thought they were finally discarding me. They had just handed me a weapon. My name is Grace Harper, and this is how I learned that sometimes the only way to inherit your life is to be expelled from someone else's. The exact moment I understood my family wasn't just dysfunctional, but actively predatory, came at 7:35 on a December evening, but to understand that moment, you need to know how I got there. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in my office at Briarstone Logistics, staring at a compliance report that made my stomach turn. 37 pages of meticulously documented evidence that my father's company, my company technically since I'd signed my name to these contracts, was laundering money through a logistics deal with a Sudanese shell corporation. The numbers were clean on the surface. Beneath, they were rotting. My desk phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized. The Harper estate. Grace Harper, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Your father wants you at dinner tonight. Victoria's voice was crystalline, her diction perfect. My stepmother didn't make requests. She issued directives. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. What's the occasion? I asked, though I already felt the cold weight of dread settling in my chest. Does there need to be one? A pause, delicate as a knife blade. It's your birthday, isn't it? The line went dead before I could respond. I sat back in my chair, looking out at the Boston skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. 42 stories below, people moved through their lives unaware that empires were built on foundations of paper and lies. The Briarstone deal sat on my desk, waiting for my signature. 3 weeks ago, I'd refused to approve it. My father had called me into his office, not asked, summoned, and stood behind his desk like a judge at a sentencing. You're being emotional, he'd said, not looking up from his computer. This hesitation, this moralizing, it's weak, and I don't tolerate weakness in my bloodline. The deal violates international sanctions, I'd replied, keeping my voice steady even as my hands shook. If the SEC investigates, the SEC won't investigate. He'd finally looked at me then, his eyes the color of January ice. Because people like us don't get investigated. We get consulted. That's the difference between power and principle, Grace. One builds dynasties, the other builds graveyards. Which one did it build for Mom? The words had left my mouth before I could stop them. His face had gone perfectly still. When he spoke, his voice could have frozen blood. Get out of my office. I hadn't been back since. My colleagues had started avoiding me in hallways. My assistant had requested a transfer. I knew what was coming, the quiet removal, the press release about pursuing other opportunities, the erasure of my name from the family business. But a birthday dinner? The Harpers didn't celebrate birthdays. We weaponized them. I arrived at the estate at 6:45, 15 minutes early. The Harper house rose from the Massachusetts coastline like a Gothic accusation, all dark stone and sharp angles, built by my great-grandfather in 1923 when he'd made his first fortune in shipping. 3 generations of Harpers had lived here. 3 generations had learned that love was a transaction and family was a corporation with bloodline bylaws. The circular driveway was full of cars. I recognized my uncle's Mercedes, my cousin Tyler's Tesla, Aunt Eleanor's vintage Bentley. At least 20 vehicles, which meant 20 witnesses to whatever performance William Harper had planned. The front door opened before I could knock. Stevens, our butler for 30 years, stood in the doorway. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Good evening, Miss Harper, he said, his voice carefully neutral. They're waiting in the dining hall. Stevens, I said quietly, what's happening? For a moment, something human flickered across his weathered face. Then the professional mask returned. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, miss. He stepped aside. I walked past him into the marble foyer, where a massive chandelier cast fractured light across ancestral portraits. My mother's face watched me from the wall. Catherine Harper, painted in her late 20s before she'd learned what kind of man she'd married. Before the accident that had closed her casket and ended her life at 37. I was almost the same age now that she'd been then. The sound of muted conversation filtered through from the dining hall. I smoothed my black dress, simple, professional, armor disguised as clothing, and pushed open the heavy oak doors. 23 faces turned toward me. 23 sets of eyes cataloging my appearance, my posture, the controlled expression I'd learned to wear like a second skin. The dining table was a slab of mahogany long enough to seat 30. The Harper family filled half of it tonight. Victoria sat at the far end wearing cream silk and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Uncle Richard was there with his wife, their 3 adult children arranged like chess pieces. Aunt Eleanor, who sent me religious cards every Christmas, sat with her hands folded in prayer position. My cousin Tyler, Golden Boy favorite nephew, lounged in his chair like he owned the room, which someday he probably would. And at the head of the table, in the chair that had been his father's and his grandfather's before him, sat William Harper. He was 62 but looked 50. Money bought good genetics and better dermatologists. His silver hair was perfectly cut, his suit tailored to knife-edge precision. He watched me enter with the expression of a biologist observing an experiment, curious, detached, vaguely disappointed by the results. "Grace," he said, not a greeting, an acknowledgement. "Sit." The only empty chair was at his right hand. I crossed the room, aware that every step was being measured, every breath calculated. The only sounds were my heels on marble and the clinical clink of sterling silver against bone china. I sat. A place setting appeared before me, Limoges porcelain that cost more than most people's monthly rent. A server I didn't recognize poured wine I wouldn't drink. "Thank you all for coming," William said, addressing the table. His voice carried the practiced warmth of a man who'd given 1,000 speeches. "Family is everything. Blood is bond. We gather tonight to reinforce those bonds." Aunt Eleanor murmured agreement. Tyler raised his wine glass in a silent toast. "Grace," William continued, turning his attention to me. "You're 34 today." "Yes," I said. "Your mother was 37 when she died." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. "She never understood the weight of this family's legacy, the sacrifices required to maintain it." My throat tightened, but I kept my face neutral. "Mom understood perfectly. That's why she drove her car off a bridge." His voice cut through mine like a scalpel. "Because she was weak, unstable, unable to handle the pressure of being a Harper." The lie sat on the table between us, as polished and false as the china. "Now," he continued, reaching for something beside his water glass, "we need to discuss your future." It was a blue legal folder, thick as a Bible. He placed his hand on top of it with the reverence of a judge handling evidence. "What is that?" I asked. "Your exit package." He slid it across the table. It stopped exactly 1 inch from my plate, precisely aligned. "Sign it." I stared at the folder. Around the table, conversation had died. Everyone was watching. This was the main event. This was why they'd come. "I'm not signing anything I haven't read," I said. "You don't need to read it." William's voice dropped half an octave, carrying a threat like a blade in a velvet sheath. "You just need to understand what it means. Complete renunciation of all claims to the Harper family trust. A clean break, immediate and permanent." "You can't do this," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were hollow. William Harper could do whatever he wanted. He always had. "I can do exactly this." "So." He leaned forward, and for the first time I saw genuine emotion in his eyes, rage, barely controlled. "You have become a liability, Grace. Your hesitation on the Briarstone deal, your constant questioning, your moralizing, your weakness. I built this empire on strength, on the ability to make hard choices. You don't have that capacity. I have rights. You have what I allow you to have." His palm slammed down on the folder, the sound like a gunshot in the vaulted room. Every glass on the table jumped. "I gave you life. I gave you education, opportunity, everything. And you've repaid me with nothing but disappointment." I felt something crack inside my chest. not breaking, crystallizing, turning from soft hope into something harder, colder. The Briarstone deal violates sanctions, I said quietly. It's illegal. If I sign off on it, I'm complicit in— You're complicit in nothing. He stood up, his chair scraping back violently. The veins in his neck corded, a roadmap of fury. Because you are no longer part of this family. You are no longer a Harper. You are fired. The word hung in the air. Fired. From a family. From a bloodline. I have rights to the trust, I said, standing to face him. My voice was steady now, powered by a cold anger I didn't know I possessed. Grandfather's will specifically. Your grandfather is dead. William's voice was a roar now, uncontrolled. I am the patriarch. I am the executor. And I say you are nothing. You are a leech who has taken everything and contributed nothing. Get out! The scream tore through the room, raw and ugly. It was the sound of a man who'd been holding something back for years and had finally let it loose. I expected silence. I expected my cousin Tyler to look uncomfortable, Aunt Eleanor to gasp in horror, Uncle Richard to attempt diplomatic intervention. Instead, I heard a sound that stopped my heart. Clap, clap, clap. Tyler started it. Slow, deliberate applause. Then Aunt Eleanor joined in, her prayer hands coming apart to create rhythm. Victoria stood, clapping with manicured precision. One by one, every person at that table rose and applauded. They weren't clapping politely, they were cheering. Uncle Richard let out a bark of laughter, actual, genuine relief. Tyler was grinning like he'd just won a prize. Even the servers at the edges of the room looked unsurprised, as if they'd been briefed on the script. The betrayal hit harder than William's words. These were people I'd grown up with, people whose children I'd babysat, whose secrets I'd kept, whose careers I'd helped advance with strategic introductions and favorable references. I'd been to their weddings, their hospital rooms, their victories and defeats, and they were applauding my execution. Victoria walked around the table toward me. Her heels clicked with the precision of a metronome. She leaned down, her lips brushing my ear, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something French and expensive and cold. Finally, she whispered. We can clear out the debris. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs, forcing stillness into my body through sheer will. I would not give them tears. I would not give them the satisfaction of watching me break. I stood slowly. The applause continued, a wall of sound that felt like physical pressure against my skin. I reached for my chair, heavy oak, carved with the Harper family crest. With deliberate, agonizing slowness, I lifted it and set it back in perfect alignment with the table, exactly centered, precisely positioned. It was a small gesture. But in this world of rigid symbols and calculated moves, it was a declaration. I am not fleeing in chaos. I am leaving because I choose to be done with you. I looked at William one last time. He was breathing hard, face red, waiting for me to beg, waiting for me to crumble. Happy birthday to me, I said softly. I turned and walked toward the double doors. The applause faded as I moved, replaced by the murmur of vultures discussing the carcass. I heard Tyler's voice. About time. Now we can finally restructure the trust properly. I pushed through the doors into the hallway. The portraits of dead Harpers watched me pass. Men who'd built fortunes on other people's suffering. Women who'd learned to smile through their own erasure. My mother's face appeared again near the end of the hall, forever frozen at 30. I'm sorry, Mom, I thought. I'm sorry I didn't understand until now. Stevens stood in the foyer, holding my coat. His eyes were red. Miss Grace, he said quietly, I want you to know. It's all right, Stevens. I took the coat from his hands. You have to work here. I understand. Your mother, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She would be proud of how you walked out. She did the same thing. The night before she died. I froze with one arm in my coat sleeve. What? But Stevens had already stepped back, his face returning to professional neutrality. Good evening, Miss Harper. Safe travels. The front door opened. The December cold hit me like a wall, that particular Massachusetts winter that cuts through fabric and skin and goes straight to bone. Snow was falling in thick, heavy flakes, turning the world into a grayscale photograph. I walked down the stone steps toward the circular driveway where my car waited, a silver sedan leased through the family company, which meant it probably wasn't mine anymore either. Halfway to the car, I stopped. To my left, near the edge of the manicured grounds, something moved. A shadow that was too tall to be a deer, too still to be tree branches in the wind. I squinted through the falling snow. There was a figure standing there, partially obscured by an old oak tree. Dark coat, watching me. My heart rate spiked. One of William's security team? Someone sent to make sure I actually left? I blinked, wiping snowflakes from my lashes. When I opened my eyes again, the space beneath the tree was empty. Just wind and snow and the paranoia of a woman whose entire world had just collapsed. Get in the car, I told myself. Just get in the car and drive. I reached my sedan. The windshield was covered in a thin layer of fresh snow, except for one rectangular patch directly in front of the driver's seat. Sitting there, as if placed with surgical precision, was a black envelope. I stood in the falling snow, staring at the envelope. Heavy paper, expensive texture. My name, Grace Harper, was written across the front in silver ink. The handwriting was elegant, almost calligraphic, completely unfamiliar. I looked around. The driveway was empty. The house stood behind me, glowing with warm light from windows that no longer welcomed me. No one had followed me out. My hands were shaking as I picked up the envelope. It was heavier than it should be. Inside, I could feel the thickness of multiple pages. I unlocked the car and slid into the driver's seat, slamming the door against the wind and cold. The interior was freezing. My breath came out in clouds. I turned on the dome light. The envelope seal was black wax, unmarked. I tore it open. Inside were documents on cream-colored bond paper, the kind lawyers use for important contracts. The first page made my heart stop. Transfer of ownership. Property, Carenhold Island Estate location, coastal Maine. Coordinates, 44.2 degrees north, 68.8 degrees west, appraised value, $95 million. I stared at the number, $95 million. This was impossible. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. There were photographs attached, professional real estate shots. A rugged island rising from gray ocean, all granite cliffs and wind-twisted pines, and perched on the highest point, growing out of the rock itself like it had been carved rather than built, was a structure that looked less like a house and more like a fortress. Dark stone, brutalist architecture, reinforced glass windows. It sat on the cliff edge commanding the Atlantic like a gargoyle watching over its territory. Attached to the deed with a paperclip was a smaller card, black with silver text. Beneficiary, Grace Harper. Condition of transfer, public expulsion from Harper Family Trust. Verification, independent witness testimony required. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the sound loud in the silent car. I jumped, nearly dropping the papers. The screen showed a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, but the number itself was blocked. I opened it. You have been expelled according to the script. Now you are the owner. I looked back at the house through the snow-covered windshield. Through the high dining room windows, I could see silhouettes moving. They were raising glasses, toasting, celebrating my removal. They thought they'd just thrown me into the snow to freeze and disappear. I looked down at the deed in my lap, at the photographs of the castle on the island, at the condition that required me to be cast out in order to inherit. Someone had known this would happen. Someone had been waiting, for years, maybe, for William to scream those words. Someone had prepared this exit, this escape route, this weapon. But who? The obvious answer was my great-uncle, Thomas Blackwell, my mother's uncle, the one who'd died in a boating accident 5 years ago. They'd never found his body. William had organized the memorial service, had given a eulogy about the tragedy of losing a brilliant but troubled mind to the sea. But if Thomas was behind this, why? And how had he known, years ago, that William would eventually do this? Another text arrived. Don't go to your apartment. They're already moving to freeze your assets. Drive north. The coordinates are on the deed. There's someone waiting who will explain everything. I put the car in gear. My hands gripped the steering wheel, leather cold against my palms. I should have been crying. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, curiosity, and beneath it, a cold, hard anger that was starting to crystallize into something dangerous. I wasn't leaving as a victim. I was leaving as an owner. I drove down the long, winding driveway, tires crunching on fresh snow. As I passed through the heavy iron gates, I checked the rearview mirror. The Harper estate was shrinking, becoming a small box of light in the vast darkness. I turned onto the main road, heading north. I had nowhere to go. My apartment was leased through the family company. My credit cards would be canceled by morning. My bank accounts were probably already frozen. But I had a deed. I had an island. And I had a text message that suggested this wasn't the end of my life, but the beginning of a war. The applause from the dining room still rang in my ears. But now it sounded less like a verdict and more like the starting gun of a race they didn't know they'd entered. I drove through the night, heading northeast toward the Maine coast. The storm followed me, thick snow reducing visibility to almost nothing. I should have stopped, should have found a hotel, should have at least called someone. But who would I call? My friends were all family friends, connections maintained through Harper social networks, dinner parties, charity events. They'd already be receiving carefully worded messages. Grace is going through something. Best to give her space. We're concerned about her stability. By morning, I'd be painted as unstable. By afternoon, dangerous to myself. My phone buzzed constantly. I ignored it until I stopped for gas outside Portland. While the tank filled, I checked the notifications. 17 missed calls from Victoria, 8 from Tyler, 3 from Uncle Richard, and dozens of news alerts. Breaking. Harper family spokesperson issues statement on Grace Harper. I clicked on it, my stomach turning. We are deeply concerned for Grace's mental health and are taking all necessary steps to ensure her safety. After a concerning episode at a private family gathering, we are working with medical professionals to provide the care she needs. We ask for privacy during this difficult time. There it was, the narrative. Neat, clean, unassailable. I wasn't a whistleblower who'd refused to participate in sanctions violations. I was a mentally ill woman having a breakdown. Another text arrived, this one from a different blocked number. Emergency medical custody order being filed in Boston. Judge Harriman. He plays golf with your father every Sunday. You have maybe 6 hours before they can legally detain you for psychiatric evaluation. I stared at the message. Psychiatric hold. 72 hours minimum, maybe longer. Time enough to make me sign anything. Time enough to gaslight me into doubting my own reality. I got back in the car and drove faster. The coordinates led me to a small private airfield south of Bar Harbor. It was nearly 4 in the morning when I arrived. The snow had stopped, leaving the world wrapped in white silence. There was a single building, a hangar with a light still burning inside. I parked and got out, my breath clouding in the frozen air. The hangar door opened. A man stepped out, maybe 50, wearing a heavy winter coat and a Red Sox cap. He looked me over with the practiced assessment of someone used to trouble. "Grace Harper?" he asked. "Yes." "Your ride's ready. Charter float plane. Pilot's name is Davidson. He doesn't ask questions and you don't volunteer answers. Understood?" "Who sent you?" I asked. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who's been waiting a long time to make sure you got where you needed to go. Now get in the plane before your father's people figure out where you are." Inside the hangar, a de Havilland Beaver sat ready, its floats gleaming under fluorescent lights. The pilot, Davidson, was doing his pre-flight check. He glanced at me once, nodded, and went back to his instruments. I climbed into the passenger seat. The engine coughed to life with a roar that echoed through the hangar. Within minutes, we were taxiing out onto the dark tarmac. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked through the headset. Davidson's voice crackled back. "Place called Carenhold Island, about 40 miles offshore. Not on most maps. Your uncle bought it 15 years ago, built on it for 10, then disappeared. Nobody's been out there except the caretaker since. What's the caretaker's name? Didn't ask, didn't want to know. Davidson pulled back on the yoke, and we lifted into the pre-dawn darkness. Lady, I've been flying charters in Maine for 20 years. I know when to mind my business. Whatever you're running from, I hope that island's fortress enough. Below us, the dark Atlantic stretched endlessly. No lights, no signs of civilization. Just water and distance and the growing realization that I was flying towards something I didn't understand, but for the first time in my adult life, I was flying towards something instead of running away. The sun began to rise as we approached the coordinates. Dawn broke over the ocean in shades of purple and gold, and there, rising from the water like a fist of stone, was Caronhold Island. It wasn't beautiful in any traditional sense. There were no beaches, no gentle slopes, just granite cliffs falling sheer to the ocean, topped with twisted pines that looked like they'd been fighting the wind for centuries. And at the highest point, exactly as the photographs had shown, was the castle. It was exactly as brutal as the pictures suggested. Dark stone, minimal windows, a structure designed to withstand hurricanes and sieges alike. It looked like it had grown from the rock rather than been built upon it. Jesus, Davidson muttered. Your uncle had interesting taste. It's perfect, I said, and meant it. Davidson brought us down in a narrow cove on the leeward side of the island. The floats slapped against the chop, and we taxied toward a concrete pier that jutted out from the rock face. As the engine died, the silence was absolute. No birds, no distant sound of civilization. Just the rhythmic crash of waves against stone and the whistle of wind through the pines. I'm not staying, Davidson said, already unbuckling. Current's tricky here. You're on your own. I climbed out onto the float and jumped to the pier. The wind hit me immediately. Cold, salt-laden, carrying the smell of deep ocean. Davidson handed me my small bag through the door. Good luck, he said, and there was something in his voice. Pity, maybe, or respect. Whatever happens, you picked a hell of a place to make a stand. The engine roared back to life. Within minutes, the plane was a speck in the lightening sky, and I was alone. I turned toward the island. A steep path cut into the rock led upward to the main house. I started climbing. With every step, I felt the weight of my father's expectations, my family's disappointment, my mother's ghost, all of it slipping away like a coat I'd been forced to wear for too long. I wasn't the disappointing daughter anymore. I was the intruder, the unknown variable, the piece that didn't fit their neat puzzle. And when I reached the top of the path and saw the massive iron doors of the castle up close, I understood something I'd never fully grasped before. Sometimes the only way to inherit your life is to be exiled from someone else's. I reached for the iron ring to knock. Before my hand made contact, the door clicked. The sound of heavy tumblers sliding back echoed from deep within the wood. The door swung open. A man stood in the entrance hall, tall, gray-haired, wearing a thick cable-knit sweater and tactical pants. His face was mapped with hard-living lines, and a pale scar cut through his left eyebrow. He didn't look like a butler or a caretaker. He looked like a soldier waiting for a war. "Welcome home, Ms. Harper," he said. His voice was gravel and smoke. "You're right on time." David Stone didn't move to let me inside. He stood in the doorway, blocking my entrance, studying my face with the intensity of a man reading a tactical assessment. "You look like someone who just walked through hell," he said. "I walked out of a family dinner," I replied. Same thing. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement maybe, or recognition. He stepped aside. "Then welcome to purgatory. It's warmer than hell at least, and significantly more defensible." I walked past him into the entrance hall. The warmth hit me immediately after the bitter cold outside. Not comfortable warmth, but the aggressive heat of a space that had been prepared for occupation. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something else I couldn't quite place. Ozone, maybe. Electronics. The hall was vast, stretching up 2 stories to a vaulted ceiling. The floor was polished slate, dark as the ocean outside. But what struck me most were the walls. They were covered in frames. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, stretching down the long corridor that led deeper into the house. elaborate gold leaf frames with individual gallery lights shining down on each one. Every single frame was empty, black matting, no portraits, no landscapes, no photographs of family or history, just blank space after blank space, like a museum that had been robbed of everything valuable. "What is this?" I asked, my voice echoing in the vast space. "Thomas called it the Gallery of Forgetting," David said, closing the heavy door behind me. The sound of the locks engaging was like a vault ceiling. He said the Harper family history was a curated lie. Every portrait, every photograph, every piece of memorabilia, it was all propaganda designed to make brutal men look like visionaries. I walked along the corridor, looking at the empty frames. In each one, I could imagine what should have been there. Stern-faced patriarchs, women in pearls and frozen smiles, children dressed like miniature adults, already learning to perform for the camera. "He wanted you to walk into a house that had no memory," David continued. "He said if you ever ended up here, it would be because you needed to forget where you came from, to start building something new." I stopped at one frame larger than the others. The space inside was big enough for a family portrait. "Did you know him, Thomas?" "For 3 years. He hired me to be the warden of this place, to keep it ready, to wait for you." "But you said I was late. You've been waiting 3 years. How did he know?" I stopped. The question was too large, the implications too strange. How did he know my father would do this? "Because William Harper is predictable," David said. "At least, that's what Thomas believed. He said your father was a narcissist, and narcissists always follow the same patterns. Push, test, discard. Thomas just had to wait for you to fail one of the tests badly enough that William decided you were irredeemable. The Briarstone deal, my refusal to sign, that had been the final test. But the island," I said, turning to face him. "The deed, the timing. Someone sent me that envelope tonight within minutes of my father throwing me out. Someone was watching." David's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in his eyes. "Thomas made arrangements. He had people positioned, contingencies. Is he alive?" The question hung in the air between us. David held my gaze for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally. "I haven't heard from him in 5 years, but the money kept coming. The instructions kept arriving, and 3 days ago I got a message through a secure channel saying you were about to arrive. So either Thomas is alive and orchestrating this from wherever he disappeared to, or he set up a system so sophisticated it's still running perfectly after his death." I thought about the texts on my phone, the warnings about the medical custody order, the precise timing of everything. "Before I flew here," I said, "I stopped somewhere. I needed to verify the deed was real." "Rebecca Walsh," David said. "Yes. Thomas told me you'd go to her. He said she was the only lawyer in Boston you trusted." "You know about that?" "I know about everything that was supposed to happen tonight. Your exile, your verification, your arrival. Thomas planned for all of it." He gestured toward the interior of the house. "But first, let me show you what he built. Then I'll show you why he built it." 24 hours earlier, Rebecca Walsh's office occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Boston's financial district. At 11:47 p.m., I was one of the few people in the building. My car, William's car, technically, was parked in a visitor spot, ticking as the engine cooled. I'd called Rebecca from a gas station, my voice shaking. "I need you to verify something. I know it's late. I know I'm asking—" "Get up here," she'd interrupted. "I'll have coffee ready." Now I sat across from her glass desk while she examined the deed with the focused intensity of a surgeon performing triage. Rebecca was 43, with salt and pepper hair she didn't bother dyeing, and eyes that could dissect a lie at 50 paces. She'd defended me 2 years ago when a business competitor had tried to claim I'd violated a non-compete. She'd eviscerated their case so thoroughly that they'd settled for pennies and slunk away. She was expensive, brilliant, and completely immune to the Harper family's influence, which made her the rarest commodity in Boston, someone who couldn't be bought. "Stop pacing," she said without looking up from the documents. "You're making me nervous." I forced myself to sit. My leg bounced under the desk. "Is it real?" Let me work. She'd put on latex gloves, a habit from her days in criminal defense, and was examining the deed with a jeweler's loupe. Every few minutes, she'd type something into her computer, cross-referencing codes I couldn't see. 10 minutes passed. 15. I watched the clock on the wall tick toward midnight. Finally, Rebecca set down the magnifying glass and pulled off her gloves. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "It's real," she said. "And it's fucking terrifying." My heart jumped. Terrifying how? She spun her monitor so I could see. The screen showed a complex diagram of corporate structures, lines connecting boxes with names like Isle of Man Holdings Limited and Singapore Trust Services and Silver Meridian Foundation. This isn't just a deed, Grace. This is a masterpiece of asset protection. Whoever structured this knew exactly what they were doing. Thomas Blackwell, I said. My great-uncle. The one who died 5 years ago? Supposedly. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. She zoomed in on part of the diagram. Look at this. The property deed originates from a chain of 5 shell companies. It starts in the Isle of Man, routes through a blind trust in Singapore, passes through 2 holding companies in the Cayman Islands, and terminates in something called the Silver Meridian Trust. Is that illegal? No, it's brilliant. Every jurisdiction involved has strict privacy laws. The ownership chain is completely opaque to anyone who doesn't have the decryption keys. The IRS can't touch it. Creditors can't find it. And most importantly, she highlighted a section of legal text. William Harper can't claim it. But I can? You're listed as the primary beneficiary, but here's the terrifying part. She pulled up another document, fingers flying across the keyboard. Read this clause. I leaned forward, scanning the dense legal language. Then I saw it. The assets held within the Silver Meridian Trust shall remain dormant and inaccessible until such time as the primary beneficiary, Grace Harper, is publicly expelled, disowned, or otherwise removed from the familial line of succession by the patriarch William Harper. Proof of expulsion must be verifiable by independent witness testimony or public declaration. The words blurred. I read them again. It's a trap, I whispered. It's a trigger mechanism, Rebecca corrected. Someone built this years ago and set it to activate only if one very specific thing happened, William throwing you out. But how could Thomas know? Because he knew William. Rebecca's voice was sharp. He understood the pattern. Push, test, discard. This trust has been sitting dormant, waiting. If you'd quit on your own, or if you'd stayed and become the obedient daughter, this asset would have rotted in legal limbo forever. But the moment William expelled you publicly, in front of witnesses with clear intent, it unlocked. I sat back, my mind racing. Someone wanted me out of that family. Someone wanted you to have an escape route when William inevitably forced you out. There's a difference. Rebecca closed the documents and looked at me directly. Grace, whoever did this spent probably $15 million just on the legal architecture. The island itself is valued at $95 million. That's a $110 million bet on your father being exactly the kind of man who would eventually do what he did tonight. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. News alert. Harper family spokesperson expresses concern for Grace Harper's mental health. Rebecca saw it too. It's already starting. The narrative control? He's going to paint me as unstable, I said. Dangerous. Someone who needs to be institutionalized for her own good. Yes. And if he succeeds, he can argue you're mentally incompetent to manage a $95 million asset. He'll petition the court to appoint a conservator. Want to guess who that would be? Him. Or Victoria. Same result. Rebecca pulled up another screen. But here's the thing about possession. If you're physically occupying the property, if you're a resident of that island, evicting you becomes exponentially harder. It's not a paper asset anymore. It's your home. Forcibly removing someone from their primary residence requires a much higher legal standard. So I need to get there? You need to get there and stay there. Make yourself visible. Document your occupancy. And whatever you do, don't sign anything. William will send lawyers with papers that look official. Emergency medical custody orders, temporary conservatorships, financial competency hearings. Don't sign. Don't even acknowledge receipt. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. Emergency medical custody order being filed. Judge Harriman, 6 hours before they can legally detain you. I showed Rebecca. She swore quietly. That's faster than I expected. Harriman is in William's pocket. He'll rubber stamp anything. Then I need to leave. Now. Rebecca was already writing something on her business card. This is my emergency line. Direct satellite phone. Don't use your cell, they can track it. When you get to the island, call me on a landline if there is one. I'll start filing counter motions, but, Grace? She looked at me seriously. This is going to get ugly. William doesn't lose gracefully. I know. No, I don't think you do. She stood, walking to the window that overlooked the glittering Boston skyline. Men like your father, when they feel control slipping, they don't just fight back. They scorch the earth. He'll come after everyone around you. He'll pressure me to drop you as a client. He'll threaten anyone who helps you. Then why are you helping me? She smiled, a thin, sharp expression. Because I'm expensive enough that I don't need his business. And because your mother came to see me once, about 6 months before she died. My heart stopped. What? She wanted to know about divorce proceedings, how to protect assets, how to get custody of you if things got contentious. Rebecca turned from the window. I told her it would be difficult, that William had resources and connections, that she'd need ironclad evidence if she wanted to win. Did she have evidence? She said she was working on it. She said she'd found something that would change everything. She was supposed to come back 2 weeks later with documents. Rebecca's face was grim. She died before the appointment. The room felt airless. I think your mother's car accident was awfully convenient for William. I think the toxicology report that showed alcohol in her system was signed by a medical examiner who retired 6 months later to a very comfortable consulting position. And I think when someone with Catherine Harper's determination says they've found evidence that will change everything and then dies in a single car accident on a clear night. She trailed off. I've learned not to believe in coincidences. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. Did you tell anyone? Who would I tell? I had no proof. Just suspicions and a dead woman who'd come to me for legal advice, but I never forgot. She handed me the deed, now secured in a waterproof envelope. So yes, Grace, I'm helping you, because I think you're finishing something your mother started, and I'll be damned if I let William Harper bury another woman who threatened his empire. I took the envelope. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just survive. Get to that island. Dig yourself in. And whatever Thomas left you there, use it. Present. David led me deeper into the castle. The architecture was brutalist, all concrete and steel and glass, but softened by unexpected touches. Wood paneling in some corridors, thick rugs that absorbed sound, lighting that was warm rather than clinical. Thomas built this over 10 years, David said as we walked. He didn't just want a house, he wanted a fortress, something that could withstand anything William threw at it. We passed through a great room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. The sun was fully up now, turning the ocean a steely blue. From this height, I could see for miles. No other land, no boats, just water and sky and isolation. How do you get supplies? I asked. Monthly deliveries from the mainland. There's a helipad on the south lawn. Generator runs on diesel, backup on solar. Water comes from a desalination plant Thomas had installed. We're completely self-sufficient. Could last 6 months without resupply if we had to. Why would we have to? David didn't answer. He stopped at a door at the end of a long hallway. Unlike the others, this one was steel, heavy, industrial, with a biometric scanner mounted beside it. This is what Thomas called the quiet vault, David said. The heart of the house. I approached the scanner. It glowed blue, waiting. I placed my palm against the glass. The light swept across my hand. Blue turned to green. Identity confirmed. Grace Harper. Status authorized. Then, access denied. Error. Conditions incomplete. I pulled my hand back. What does that mean? The deed gets you the island. David said. It gets you this house, food, shelter, safety. But the vault, what's actually inside, that requires more than just showing up. What does it require? The second key, which is, I don't know. He looked genuinely frustrated. Thomas set up the security before he disappeared. He told me the vault would open when the conditions were met, that you'd understand when the time came. I stared at the steel door, feeling the weight of questions I couldn't answer. What was inside? Why the extra security? What had Thomas or my mother hidden here that was so valuable it needed biometric locks and cryptic conditions? David's radio crackled. He pulled it from his belt, listened, then his face changed. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? Security center. There's something you need to see. He led me at a near run through corridors, down a spiral staircase to a door I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged in a different building, all modern technology and glowing screens. Banks of monitors covered one wall, showing different camera angles of the island and surrounding ocean. Servers blinked in racks. A radar screen swept in the corner, showing a digital map of the coastal waters. And on that radar, about 4 miles offshore, was a blip. What is that? I asked, though I was starting to understand. David pulled up a camera feed, zooming in on the ocean. There, sitting low in the water, was a ship, maybe 60 feet long, painted matte gray. No running lights, no identifying marks. It's been circling since you landed, David said. No transponder signal, no radio contact, just watching. My father. His private security team, anyway, the ones he uses for problems that can't be solved with lawyers. David pulled up another screen showing vessel registration databases. The ship's not in any official registry. It's a converted trawler, the kind that can run dark when it needs to. I watched the gray shape circle through the choppy water. It looked predatory, patient. How long before they try something? I asked. They already are. David switched to a different camera angle. Look. From the ship, 3 shapes rose into the air. Not helicopters, drones. Large industrial models, 6 rotor-heavy lifters. They moved in formation, heading toward the island. Are those armed? My voice was calmer than I felt. No, but they don't need to be. They're mapping. David highlighted their flight pattern. They're scanning the foundation, looking for structural weaknesses, ventilation shafts, access points. They want to know where the vault is. Can they find it? Eventually. The vault has an air intake. If they scan with thermal imaging, they'll see the heat signature from the climate control system. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Don't let William touch the files. If those boxes disappear, you disappear from the record, just like your mother. I showed it to David. He read it without expression. Who's sending these? I asked. I don't know, but they're not wrong. Your father isn't coming here to grab you and force you into treatment. He's coming for what's in that vault. What is in the vault? David looked at me for a long moment. Thomas spent the last 5 years of his life collecting evidence, financial records, recordings, testimony, everything your mother found before she died and everything he discovered after. It's a comprehensive case against William Harper. Tax fraud, money laundering, sanctions violations. He paused. Possibly murder. The word hung in the air like a physical weight. My mother, I said. Among others. Thomas believed William had been cleaning up loose ends for decades. Anyone who threatened the empire. Anyone who knew too much. David turned back to the monitors. That's what this is really about. Not the money, not the family drama. Your father needs to destroy the evidence before it can be used against him. On the screen, the drones moved closer. They'd reached the island's perimeter, their scanning lasers sweeping across the granite cliffs in precise geometric patterns. We could jam them, David said. I have countermeasures, but if we activate them, it tells William we have something worth protecting. It confirms the location of the vault. I watched the drones. They were methodical, thorough, hunting. Something shifted inside me. The fear I'd been carrying since the dinner, since the applause, since the envelope, since everything, it didn't disappear. It transformed, hardened, became something colder and more useful. How long can we hold out if he sends people? I asked. The walls are 3 feet of granite reinforced with steel rebar. Windows are ballistic glass rated to stop a .50 caliber round. The generator is underground. We have food for 6 months, water indefinitely. David looked at me. We're safe. The question is, are you ready? Ready for what? To be the person Thomas thought you could be. He didn't leave you a vacation home, Grace. He left you a bunker. He knew a war was coming. On the monitors, the drones banked sharply, their laser sweeps intensifying. They'd found something, a thermal signature maybe, or a structural anomaly. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Breaking. Federal investigation opened into Grace Harper's alleged embezzlement at Briarstone Logistics. Sources cite missing funds from Sudan contracts. I laughed. It was a harsh sound, surprising even to me. He's fast. He's terrified, David corrected. Men like William don't move this aggressively unless they're genuinely afraid. I looked at the steel door down the hall, the vault that wouldn't open, the secrets it contained, the evidence my mother had died finding. William thought he'd thrown me into the wilderness. He thought he'd isolated me where I could be controlled or eliminated. He didn't realize he'd sent me to the armory. Those drones, I said, my voice steady. Can we blind them without jamming them? David smiled, barely, but it was there. I can trigger the automated defense protocols. Strobe lights, acoustic disorientation, signal interference. It won't destroy them, but it'll make their operators very uncomfortable. Do it. He typed commands into the console. On the screens, powerful LED arrays mounted on the castle's exterior blazed to life. Even through the cameras, the light was blinding. The drones immediately began to lose stability, their flight patterns becoming erratic. They'll report back, David said. William will know we're not sitting here passively. Good, I said. Let him come closer. Let him think we're panicking. David raised an eyebrow. Tactically, that's dangerous. William hates uncertainty, I said, thinking about 34 years of living under his rule. He only strikes when he knows the outcome. If we keep him uncertain, he'll make mistakes. He'll overcommit resources. And while he's focused on this island, he won't see what else is happening. What else is happening? I thought about Rebecca in Boston filing countermotions. I thought about the texts from the unknown number, the warnings arriving with perfect timing. I thought about Thomas, wherever he was, alive or dead, and the elaborate trap he'd spent years constructing. I don't know yet, I admitted. But Thomas didn't build all this just to give me a place to hide. He built it to give me a platform, a position of strength. The drones retreated, fleeing back toward the gray ship. On the radar, the vessel itself began to turn, heading away from the island. Not far, just far enough to regroup and reassess. They're pulling back, David said. I watched the blip on the screen. William's team, his enforcers, his final option when lawyers and money and influence failed. How long until they come back? I asked. Hard to say. They'll need to report to William. He'll need to decide his next move, maybe 6 hours, maybe less. Then we have time. Time for what? I turned away from the monitors and looked back toward the corridor, toward the steel door that held secrets worth killing for. Time to figure out how to open that vault. Time to find out what my mother died protecting. And time to turn this fortress into something my father will regret teaching me to build. David studied my face. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or respect. Thomas said you were smart, he said quietly. He didn't mention you were mean. I'm a Harper, I replied. We're all mean. I'm just the only one who admits it. Outside, the wind howled against the stone walls. The ocean crashed against the cliffs with rhythmic violence, and somewhere, 4 miles offshore, my father's mercenaries were radioing back to their employer, telling him that his daughter wasn't cowering in the dark. She was lighting up the fortress and daring him to come closer. The siege of Carenhold had begun, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't trapped. I was fortified. 6 hours after the drones retreated, I stood in front of the steel door again. This time, David was with me, and the pre-dawn exhaustion had burned away, replaced by something sharper. Adrenaline, maybe. or the cold clarity that comes when you realize you're in a race against time and don't know where the finish line is. "Tell me about the paper," I said. David looked at me. "What?" "Rebecca said Thomas didn't trust computers, said he believed in paper and ink. If there's evidence in that vault, it's not all digital, is it?" "No. Thomas spent 5 years filling that room with physical documents. Bank statements, contracts, photographs, recordings transcribed to paper. He said servers can be wiped and clouds can be hacked, but you have to physically destroy paper. You have to burn it or shred it, and burning leaves evidence." I thought about the drones scanning the foundation, about William's team on that gray ship trying to map the location of this vault. He wants to flood it, or gas it, or drill through and incinerate everything inside. David's voice was matter of fact. "If William can't get you to sign over the island, his next option is to destroy what you might find here. Make it so there's nothing left to discover." "But the door won't open for me." "Not yet." "Conditions incomplete," I repeated. "What conditions? I have the deed. I'm here. What else do I need?" David was quiet for a moment. Then, "What do you know about your mother's death?" The question felt like ice water down my spine. "Car accident, December 15th, 15 years ago. She lost control on a bridge outside Boston. The car went through the guardrail into the river below." "What else?" "The coroner said she had alcohol in her system, .12 blood alcohol content, above the legal limit. The ruling was accidental death, possibly impaired driving." I recited the facts like I'd memorized them, and I had, reading and rereading the accident report until the words lost meaning. "She was alone, no witnesses. They found the car 3 days later when the river was dredged." "And you believed that?" "I was 19. I believed what I was told." I looked at him. "You're saying I shouldn't have." "I'm saying Thomas didn't believe it. He spent 2 years investigating her death. He talked to the mechanic who'd serviced her car the week before, said the brakes were perfect. He found the weather records for that night, clear, dry, no ice. He tried to access the original toxicology report, but it was sealed by court order." "Sealed by who?" "Judge Alan Harriman. Same judge who's about to sign your medical custody order." The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they made was uglier than I'd imagined. "William killed her." "Thomas believed so. He couldn't prove it. William's too careful for that, but he found patterns. Financial transfers, offshore accounts activated right before your mother died, payments to people who specialized in making problems disappear." I put my hand against the cold steel of the vault door. "What did she know?" "Everything." David pulled out his phone and showed me a photograph. It was old, printed from a digital file and then photographed again, layers of protection. It showed a page from a ledger, handwritten, with dates and account numbers and transaction amounts. "This is one page from what Thomas called the Meridian files. Your mother found them in William's private office at the estate. She photographed hundreds of pages before she fled." "Fled to where?" "Here, to Thomas. 6 months before she died." The world tilted. "She was on this island?" "For 3 weeks. Thomas had just started building the castle. It wasn't finished, but it was secure enough. She came here, scared out of her mind, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would have destroyed William. She and Thomas worked together, organizing it, preparing to take it to the FBI. What happened?" "William found out she'd run. He couldn't know where. Thomas was very careful, but he knew she'd left with something dangerous. So he did what he always does. He sent her a message." "Me," I said quietly. "You were still at Harvard. William called you, didn't he? Asked you to come home for the weekend?" I closed my eyes, remembering. "He said he missed me, that he wanted to talk about my future at the company. He'd never said anything like that before. I swallowed hard. I thought he was finally proud of me. Your mother came back to Boston the next day. She couldn't leave you there alone with him, not knowing what he might do. She told Thomas she'd take the evidence to the FBI herself. She just needed to see you first, to know you were safe. And then she died." And then she had an accident on a bridge at 9:30 at night, alone, supposedly drunk, in a car whose brakes were inspected and certified 5 days earlier. I opened my eyes. The steel door was blurry. I realized I was crying. Not soft tears, but the hot, angry kind that come from rage that has nowhere to go. Why didn't Thomas take the evidence to the FBI after she died? He tried. Twice. The first time, the FBI agent he contacted was transferred to Alaska within a week. The second time, Thomas's apartment was broken into and his computer stolen. Nothing else. Not his TV, not his cash, not his expensive watch collection. Just the computer. William. William has reach. Thomas realized he couldn't fight him conventionally. So he disappeared. Faked his death in a boating accident. Took the evidence and built this place. Built a trap that would only spring when the conditions were exactly right. When I was expelled. When you were expelled. When you were angry enough, desperate enough, and isolated enough to finish what your mother started. David looked at me seriously. Thomas bet everything that you'd be stronger than your father, that you'd be Catherine's daughter, not William's, that when the time came, you'd choose truth over comfort. I wiped my eyes. The vault contains everything your mother died protecting, everything Thomas spent 5 years gathering. It's the complete case against William Harper, but it requires the second key. Which is what? David shook his head. Thomas said you'd know when you were ready, that the vault would open when you understood who you were really fighting for. I looked at the empty frames stretching down the corridor, the gallery of forgetting. Thomas had wanted me to walk into a house with no history so I could build my own, but maybe I didn't need to forget the history. Maybe I needed to remember it correctly. Show me where my mother stayed, I said. When she was here, show me her room. The journalist arrived at dawn. I was in the security center with David, watching the radar when the helicopter appeared on the screen. Not William's sleek Sikorsky, but something older, cheaper, a rattling bell Jet Ranger with faded blue paint. Expecting company? David asked, his hand moving toward a locked cabinet I suspected held weapons. No, but I think they're expected anyway. The helicopter touched down hard on the south lawn, bouncing once before settling. The door opened before the rotor stopped spinning, and a woman jumped out. Small, thin, wearing a battered leather jacket and jeans. She had short, iron-gray hair and walked through the prop wash like it was a minor inconvenience rather than a dangerous downdraft. David pulled up the external camera, zooming in on her face. Jesus, that's Sarah Mitchell. The name was familiar. The investigative reporter? 3 Pulitzers, 17 lawsuits, 0 fucks given. David looked impressed. She's been chasing your father for a decade. He calls her that termite because she keeps burrowing into his foundations. I watched her approach the main entrance, carrying a heavy canvas duffel bag like it weighed nothing. She didn't look intimidated by the fortress architecture or the isolation. She looked like someone walking into a meeting she'd been late for. Should I let her in? David asked. Do we have a choice? We always have a choice, but if Thomas sent her, turning her away would be stupid. The intercom buzzed. Sarah's voice came through, raspy and impatient. Grace Harper, I know you're watching. Open the door. We don't have time for security theater. I looked at David. He shrugged. Your call. I pressed the intercom button. How did you get this location? Same way you got the deed. Now let me in before your father's goons spot my helicopter and decide to shoot it down. David unlocked the main entrance remotely. Through the cameras, I watched Sarah enter the Great Hall, looking around with the quick, assessing eyes of someone cataloging details for future reference. We met her in the entrance hall. She dropped her duffel bag, looked me up and down, and spoke without preamble. You look like hell, Harper. Good. Means you're paying attention. Sarah Mitchell, I said, trying for some kind of social grace. I've read your work. Save the pleasantries. We have maybe 6 hours before your father makes his next move, and we need to be ready. She pulled out a tablet and thrust it into my hands. Look. The screen showed a live news broadcast, a polished anchor with a concerned expression. The chyron read, Breaking. Concern grows for Grace Harper. Sources close to the family say Grace Harper has been struggling with a severe manic episode for months. the anchor was saying. Following a violent outburst at her father's birthday dinner, she has fled to an undisclosed location. The family is pleading for her to return to treatment. Sarah took the tablet back. He's good, I'll give him that. By noon, #unstable_air will be trending. By evening, he'll have 5 psychiatrists lined up to testify they're concerned about your mental state. By tomorrow, he'll have the legal grounds to lock you up indefinitely. I know, I said. My lawyer warned me. Rebecca Walsh, smart choice. She's one of the few who can't be bought. Sarah pulled a silver USB drive from her jacket pocket. It was encased in clear resin, heavy and industrial looking. But lawyers can only do so much. What we need is to go on a fence, and I brought the ammunition. What's on the drive? David asked. 10 years of investigative journalism, bank transfers, shell company registrations, charitable foundation documents showing that the Harper Foundation is basically a money laundering operation. William takes in donations, claims the tax write-offs, then funnels the money right back out through consulting fees to companies he owns. She set the drive on a side table. It's not as sexy as murder, but it's ironclad. This alone could put him away for 20 years. Why give it to me? I asked. Why not publish it yourself? Sarah's expression hardened. Because every time I get close, he crushes the story, threatens the publisher, buys the media outlet. 3 years ago, I had a front-page feature ready to run in the Times. It was killed 48 hours before publication. The editor who killed it got a promotion and a 7-figure bonus. So you're using me. I'm arming you. She met my eyes. Grace, you're the only person on earth who has both the evidence and the motive to actually pull the trigger. I'm a journalist. I can investigate, but I can't prosecute. You're his daughter. You have standing. You have access. And now, thanks to Thomas, you have a fortress to operate from. Thomas sent you, I said. It wasn't a question. Thomas contacted me 5 years ago, right before he disappeared. Gave me this drive and said, when Grace inherits the island, bring this to her. She'll know what to do with it. I looked at the USB drive. So innocuous. So small. What do you get out of this? The story of the decade. William Harper, media titan and philanthropist, exposed as a fraud and a criminal. His empire collapsing in real time. And maybe, her voice softened slightly. Maybe justice for all the people he's destroyed over the years, including your mother. David was examining the drive. It's encrypted. Of course it is. Thomas didn't trust anyone, including me. Sarah looked at David. You must be the warden. David Stone, former NCIS, dishonorably discharged for refusing to cover up evidence in a contractor fraud case. David's jaw tightened. That's classified. Nothing's classified if you know who to ask. Sarah turned back to me. The drive is encrypted with a dual-key protocol. It needs 2 biometric signatures to unlock. One from Thomas's bloodline. That's you, Grace. And one from what Thomas called the second witness. My mother, I said. Sarah's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. You know about Catherine's involvement? I'm learning. David told me she came here, that she and Thomas were building a case together. Then you understand what's at stake. The drive contains the digital evidence. But the physical documents, the actual paper trail, that's what's in the vault, isn't it? We can't open the vault, I admitted. It says conditions incomplete. Sarah frowned. What conditions? We don't know. Some kind of trigger that hasn't been met yet. She thought for a moment, then pulled out her phone and started typing. Thomas was many things, but he wasn't arbitrary. If he locked the vault with conditions, those conditions have meaning. They're not just security, they're a test. He's making sure you're ready. Ready for what? To become what he needed you to be. Not just Catherine's daughter, not just William's victim. Something new. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went pale. What? I asked. She turned the screen toward me. It was a news alert. Breaking. FBI opens investigation into Grace Harper for alleged embezzlement at Briarstone Logistics. That was fast, David muttered. He's panicking, Sarah said. This is sloppy. William doesn't usually move this aggressively unless he's genuinely afraid. The embezzlement angle won't hold. There's no actual evidence because you didn't embezzle anything. But it doesn't matter. It's about the narrative. He's preemptively discrediting you in case you go public with accusations. My phone rang. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen. I answered. Grace, don't say anything specific. Your line might be monitored. Rebecca's voice was tight. The embezzlement investigation is bogus, but it's real enough that they've frozen your bank accounts. Do you have access to cash? I'm on an island in the middle of the Atlantic. Cash isn't really my priority. Good point. Listen, I'm filing countermotions, but William's moving fast. He's got 3 different legal angles going simultaneously: the medical custody order, a conservatorship petition, and now this criminal investigation. He's trying to overwhelm the system. Can you stop him? I can slow him down. Maybe 24 hours, but Grace, he's not just coming after you. He's going after everyone around you. My junior associate just resigned this morning, said his family was receiving threats. And she hesitated. What? My investigator found something. Mark Saling, the associate who's been helping with the estate paperwork. Someone wired $50,000 to his personal account yesterday from a shell company connected to William. My stomach dropped. Mark's been leaking information. It looks that way. I'm firing him and reporting it to the Bar Association, but the damage is done. He had access to everything: our strategy, our timeline, your location. Then William knows I'm on Karen hold. Probably, which means the gray ship you reported isn't just surveillance, it's preparation. I looked at David. He'd pulled up the radar again. The ship was back, closer this time, only 2 miles offshore. Rebecca, I need to go. Thank you for the warning. Grace, wait. One more thing. I got a strange email this morning, anonymous sender. It said, "Don't trust anyone in the Massachusetts legal system. They're already drafting the injunction." Who sent it? I can't trace it, but whoever it is, they're watching everything in real time, and they're trying to help, or trying to make us think they're helping. She paused. Be careful who you trust. The line went dead. I looked at Sarah. How do I know you're not working for William? You don't, she said bluntly. But if I were, I wouldn't have spent 10 years investigating him and burning every bridge in the industry to do it. I wouldn't have been sued 17 times and won every case. And I wouldn't have shown up at a fortress in the Atlantic when I could be safe at home. She crossed her arms. But you're right to be paranoid. William specializes in turning people, offering them exactly what they need most: money, security, advancement. Everyone has a price. What's yours? The truth, in print, with my byline. She smiled grimly. I'm a journalist, Grace. I don't want money or power. I want the story. And your father's downfall is the story of my career. David's radio crackled. Contact, he said, moving to the security console. Multiple signatures. On the screens, I saw what he meant. The drones were back, not 3 this time, but a dozen. They rose from the gray ship in formation, heading straight for the island. He's not scanning anymore, David said. He's preparing to breach. Sarah was already typing furiously on her phone. I'm uploading what I can to secure servers. If they take the island, at least the digital evidence survives. They're not taking the island, I said. My voice was steady, powered by something I'd never felt before. Not anger, not fear, but cold certainty. David, activate all defenses. Sarah, get that USB ready. We're going to need it. For what? Sarah asked. Leverage. I walked toward the steel door of the vault, an idea forming. If we can't open the vault physically, we find another way. Thomas left clues. He left messages. And somewhere in this house is the answer to what conditions incomplete means. I stopped in front of the door, placing my hand on the cold metal. My mother was here. She lived here for 3 weeks. Where did she sleep? Where did she work? What did she leave behind? David and Sarah exchanged a look. Follow me, David said. The bedroom was on the 2nd floor at the end of a quiet corridor I hadn't explored yet. David opened the door, and the smell hit me first. Lavender and old paper, like someone had sealed a memory inside and left it to age. It was a small room, intimate. A simple bed with a white quilt. A writing desk positioned to look out over the cliffs. And on the back of a chair, draped casually as if its owner had just stepped out, was a pale blue shawl with white lily embroidery. I knew that shawl. I walked into the room slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter the moment. I'd seen this shawl in photographs, my mother wearing it at her 30th birthday party. Catherine Harper, smiling at the camera, genuinely happy in a way I rarely saw in pictures. It was her favorite. I remembered asking about it once when I was small. "Where did you get it, Mom?" "From my mother," she'd said. "And someday, Grace, it'll be yours." But I'd never seen it after her death. I'd assumed it had been lost, or that Victoria had thrown it away, erasing Catherine from the house the way William erased her from history. "She was here," I whispered. "My mother was really here." "For 3 weeks," David confirmed softly. This was her room. Thomas kept it exactly as she left it, cleaned it, maintained it, but never changed anything. I moved to the desk. There was a leather portfolio lying open, as if someone had been working and stepped away for just a moment. Inside were photocopies, hundreds of them, bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings, the Meridian files. "She documented everything," Sarah said from the doorway, her voice unusually quiet. "Thomas told me she was methodical, careful. She knew she was going up against someone powerful, so she made sure every piece of evidence had multiple backups." I turned through the pages, seeing my mother's handwriting in the margins, notes, questions, calculations. Her mind working through the puzzle of William's empire, finding the threads to pull. "Why did she go back?" I asked. If she had all this, if she was safe here, why did she go back to Boston? "You," David said simply. I closed my eyes. "He used me as bait. He used you as leverage, and she couldn't leave you there. Not with him, not knowing what he was capable of." On the desk was a sealed envelope, cream-colored stationery, expensive, written on the front in Catherine's delicate script, "For Grace." My hands shook as I picked it up. The paper was heavy, substantial. Inside, I could feel multiple pages. "Thomas left it here," David said. "Said you'd find it when you were ready. Said the room was part of the vault, not locked behind steel, but locked behind understanding." I broke the wax seal. The letter inside was dated 15 years ago, 3 days before my mother died. "My darling Grace, if you're reading this, it means you've been pushed out of the house just like I was. It means your father has finally turned on you the way he turned on me. I am so, so sorry. I wanted to protect you from this. I wanted to take you with me when I left. But the lawyer said if I took you, William would charge me with kidnapping, that he had judges and prosecutors ready to issue warrants, that I would never see you again if I ran with you. So I had to make a choice. Stay and let him destroy both of us, or leave and hope I could come back for you when it was safe. I chose to leave you behind so I could save you. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. You need to know the truth. I am not depressed. I am not an addict. I am not weak, no matter what William tells people. I am preparing to testify. I have found evidence, concrete, undeniable proof that your father is a criminal. Tax fraud, money laundering, sanctions violations. He's been doing it for years, and I've found the paper trail. Thomas is helping me. We're building a case. We're going to the FBI. But if something happens to me, if I have an accident before I can get to the grand jury, Thomas has promised to lock everything away until you're ready, until you're strong enough to finish what I started, until you're angry enough to burn it all down. Grace, listen to me. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not the failure your father makes you feel like. You are my daughter. You are made of iron and fire. You are the only thing William Harper truly fears, because you are the only thing he cannot buy or control. I have hidden the physical evidence in this place Thomas built. The island, the castle, the vault. It's all for you. It's your inheritance, but more than that, it's your weapon. When you're ready, you'll know how to use it. Do not let them tell you that you're unstable. Do not let them make you doubt yourself. You are stronger than you know. You are braver than you believe. And you are exactly the person who can end this. I love you, my brilliant girl. I will always be with you. Even when you can't see me, I am here. In this room. In this island. In every choice you make to stand up to him. Be brave. Be relentless. And when you finish this, remember, you're not doing it for revenge. You're doing it for justice. Forever yours, Mom. I read it twice. Then a third time. My vision blurred, tears falling onto the paper, smudging ink that had waited 15 years to be read. She hadn't killed herself. She hadn't been weak. She'd been a warrior preparing for battle, and William had cut her down before she could strike. The grief I'd carried for 15 years, the guilt, the shame, the fear that I'd inherited her weakness, all of it evaporated. In its place was something new, something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. My mother hadn't failed. She'd been murdered, and I was going to make sure the world knew it. "Grace," Sarah said gently. I looked up. She was holding her phone, her face grim. "What?" "My son, Eli. He's a grad student at Northwestern, 23 years old, smart, good kid, stays out of trouble." Her hand was shaking. "I just got a call from his phone, but it wasn't him." She put it on speaker. A man's voice, smooth and cultured. "Ms. Mitchell, my name is Anderson. I work for William Harper. We've picked up your son from his apartment. He's safe, comfortable, and he'll stay that way as long as you cooperate." Sarah's face had gone white. "Let me talk to him." "Of course." A pause, then a younger voice, scared. "Mom? Mom, I don't understand what's happening. These men—" "That's enough," Anderson interrupted. "Here's how this works, Ms. Mitchell. You have something that belongs to Mr. Harper. A USB drive containing proprietary information. You're going to bring it to the mainland. Portland Jetport, Hangar 4. Alone. You have until midnight." "And if I don't?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Then Eli doesn't make it to his dissertation defense. In fact, he doesn't make it to anything. Do we understand each other?" The line went dead. Sarah dropped the phone. Her legs gave out and she sank into the desk chair. All the hard-edged professionalism, all the fearless journalism, all of it crumbled in an instant. She was just a mother whose child was in danger. "They have my son," she said. "They have my son, and they're going to kill him if I don't give them the drive." I looked at David. His face was stone. "It's Anderson, William's cleanup specialist, the one who makes problems disappear." "Can we trace the call?" I asked. "Not fast enough. And even if we could, by the time we locate them—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Sarah was crying now, harsh sobs that came from somewhere deep. "I have to give them the drive. I have to. I can't let them hurt him. He's my son. He's my son." I knelt beside her chair. "Sarah, look at me." She did, tears streaming down her face. "If you give them the drive, they'll kill him anyway," I said quietly. "You know that. Anderson doesn't leave witnesses." "Then what do I do?" She was breaking, fracturing. "What the fuck do I do?" I thought about my mother's letter, about iron and fire, about being the weapon William feared. I stood up and walked to the window. Below, the ocean churned against the cliffs. In the distance, I could see the gray ship, William's ship, his enforcers, his final solution when everything else failed. And suddenly, I understood. The vault door wouldn't open because I hadn't understood who I was fighting for. I'd thought it was about me, my inheritance, my freedom, my survival. But it wasn't. It was about everyone William had destroyed, everyone he'd threatened, everyone who'd been too scared or too isolated to fight back. My mother, Sarah's son, all the people William had crushed over decades of building his empire on fear. The vault wasn't just an evidence locker, it was an arsenal, and the second key wasn't a physical object, it was a choice. I turned back to Sarah. "We're not giving them the drive, we're giving them a war." David looked at me sharply. "What are you thinking?" Thomas didn't just collect evidence. He integrated himself into William's operation. He built the systems, created the back doors. He told me once that the best way to bring down a fortress is from the inside. I walked back to the vault door in my mind, understanding finally clicking into place. The drive is encrypted with dual biometric authentication, my DNA and my mother's, but the vault— I looked at David. It's not waiting for a key, it's waiting for a decision, a commitment. "What kind of commitment?" to finish what my mother started, to become the weapon Thomas built this place to forge. I picked up Catherine's letter. She didn't hide the evidence here just to keep it safe. She hid it here so that when I found it, I'd understand what it meant, what it cost, and what I'd have to become to use it. I held the letter against my chest, feeling the weight of 15 years of lies. The condition isn't incomplete. It's completed when I choose. When I decide that I'm not William Harper's daughter anymore. I'm Catherine Harper's daughter, and I'm here to burn down everything he built. Sarah looked up at me, hope and desperation warring in her eyes. How does that save Eli? Because we're not playing William's game anymore. I turned to David. The vault, the backup system Thomas mentioned, the one that's not connected to the network. Show me. Understanding dawned in David's face. He moved quickly, pulling back a section of wall paneling in the security room. Behind it was a small, reinforced safe. Thomas called it the nuclear option, he said, spinning the combination lock. He said use it only if everything else failed, if William came at us with overwhelming force. The safe opened. Inside was a black security token and a sheet of paper covered in alphanumeric codes. What is it? Sarah asked. David held up the token. The Glasshouse Protocol. Thomas didn't just collect evidence of William's crimes. He built the infrastructure that makes those crimes possible, the laundering system, the shell company network, the fund transfers. He designed all of it. Why? Because when you design a system, you can build in a back door, a kill switch. David's smile was grim. This token doesn't just expose William's financial crimes. It freezes them. Every account, every transfer, every dollar. It sends the complete transaction history to the SEC, the IRS, the DOJ. In real time, automatic, unstoppable. I understood. Mutually assured destruction. Exactly. We push this button, William loses access to his money. All of it, instantly. But we also lose the evidence for prosecution. The banks will create firewalls, destroy records to protect themselves. We blow up the financial infrastructure, but we can't use it to put him in prison. Unless, I said slowly, we have the paper, the physical documents in the vault, the proof that survives the digital scorched earth. Sarah stood up, wiping her eyes. Understanding was replacing fear. You're going to threaten him. Tell him if he doesn't release Eli, you'll push the button. Better, I said. I'm going to make him choose. His money or his freedom, his empire or his life. I looked at the token. Sarah, call Anderson back. Tell him you need proof of life. Tell him you need to talk to Eli directly, right now, or there's no deal. What are you planning? She asked. I'm planning to teach my father that I'm not the Harper he thinks I am. I picked up the token, feeling its weight. I'm the one he should have been afraid of all along. Sarah's hands trembled as she dialed Anderson's number. I'd given her precise instructions. Stay calm, demand proof of life, buy us time. David was at the console, fingers flying across the keyboard, setting up systems I didn't fully understand but trusted completely. The call connected on the second ring. Ms. Mitchell, Anderson's voice was smooth as silk over steel. I hope you're calling with good news. I need to talk to my son, Sarah said. Her voice shook, but she kept it together. Right now, or there's no deal. A pause. You're not in a position to make demands. And you're not getting the drive until I know Eli's alive and unharmed. Those are my terms. She looked at me. I nodded. You have 30 seconds. Another pause, longer this time. Then Eli's voice, scared but trying to sound brave. Mom, I'm okay. I'm in some kind of van. There are 3 guys. They haven't hurt me, but... That's enough, Anderson cut in. As you can hear, your son is fine. For now. The drive, Ms. Mitchell. Portland Jetport, Hangar 4, midnight. Come alone, or the next time you hear his voice, it'll be on a voicemail saying goodbye. Wait, Sarah started, but I put my hand over hers and pressed the mute button. Tell him you need time, I whispered. Tell him you're on the island and the weather's too dangerous to fly until morning. Make him think you're scared and compliant. She unmuted. I'm on Karen Hold Island. I can't get a flight out until dawn at the earliest. The storm... There is no storm, Ms. Mitchell. There is where I am. Check the weather. I'll meet you at 8 a.m. tomorrow. That's the best I can do. Silence. I could almost hear Anderson calculating, deciding whether to push or allow the extension. Finally, 8 a.m. Not a minute later. And Ms. Mitchell, if we see any law enforcement, if we detect any surveillance, your son dies. Do you understand? I understand. Good. 8 a.m. Don't make me call you again. The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone, her whole body shaking. Did I do it right? You did perfectly, I said. You bought us 12 hours. 12 hours to do what? They still have Eli. They're still going to kill him even if I give them the drive. They're not going to kill him, I said, because we're going to give them something they want more than the drive. David looked up from his console. Grace, what are you thinking? I picked up the black token, the glass house protocol. Anderson made a mistake. He told us Eli's in a van, 3 men. That's a mobile unit, which means they're not at a secure location. They're ready to move fast if things go wrong. So they're vulnerable. They think they're hunters, but they're actually exposed. I turned to David. Can you trace that call? Already did. Signal originated from a cell tower in Elizabeth, New Jersey, industrial area near the port. Can you narrow it down? Give me 20 minutes. His fingers danced across the keyboard. I'm pulling traffic camera feeds, looking for vehicles matching the profile. White cargo van, recent model, probably a Ford or Chevy. How many can there be in a 2-mile radius? A lot, Sarah said quietly. Grace, even if we find them, we can't mount a rescue. We're on an island. By the time we get back to the mainland, we don't need to rescue him, I interrupted. We need to make William choose between saving Eli and saving himself. I walked to the vault door. The biometric scanner glowed blue, waiting. I placed my palm against it. Identity confirmed. Grace Harper. Then, instead of access denied, the screen showed something new. Secondary authentication required. Place family artifact in analysis chamber. Family artifact? Sarah asked. I thought about Catherine's room, the shawl, the desk, the letter, and then I remembered what David had said. Thomas kept it exactly as she left it. Wait here, I said. I ran to Catherine's room, my heart pounding. On the desk, partially hidden under the photocopied documents, was a small silver brooch. I'd seen it in the photographs. Catherine wore it in almost every picture. It was shaped like a lily, delicate and detailed. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. I turned it over, and my breath caught. Engraved on the back, for Catherine, with all my love. T.B. Thomas Blackwell had given this to my mother, and she'd left it here, in this room, in this house built as a sanctuary. I ran back to the vault. There was a small drawer beneath the biometric scanner, barely visible. I pulled it open. Inside was a velvet-lined compartment, exactly the size of the brooch. I placed it inside and closed the drawer. The vault hummed. Deep within the walls, mechanisms engaged. The biometric scanner flashed through a sequence of colors, blue, green, gold, and then displayed new text. Genetic material detected. DNA match confirmed. Catherine Harper. Witness authentication complete. Welcome home, Grace. The steel bolts retracted with heavy final clicks. The door swung open. Behind it was not a room, but a descending staircase cut into the living rock of the island. Lights activated automatically, illuminating the way down. Thomas hid the DNA in the brooch, I said, understanding. Catherine's DNA, hair follicles preserved in the metal. The second key wasn't a person. It was a piece of her she left behind. David was already moving, pulling a tactical flashlight from his belt. I'll go first. We descended in single file, David, then me, then Sarah. The staircase spiraled down for what felt like forever, going deep beneath the foundation of the castle into the bedrock of the island itself. At the bottom was a steel door, already unlocked. Beyond it, the true vault. The room was smaller than I expected, maybe 15 feet square with concrete walls and industrial lighting, but every surface was covered with evidence. Filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with dates and case numbers. A steel table in the center held a computer, older model, standalone, clearly not connected to any network. Boxes were stacked with military precision, each labeled in Thomas's jagged handwriting. and on the walls, connected by red string like a detective's murder board, were photographs, hundreds of them. My father at charity galas, with senators, with judges, with men I recognized from news reports, arms dealers, sanctioned oligarchs, convicted fraudsters photographed years before their convictions. Jesus, Sarah breathed. This is everything. David was already opening filing cabinets, scanning contents. Financial records going back 30 years, shell company registrations, wire transfer receipts, meeting notes. He pulled out a folder. Grace, look at this. It was a photograph. Recent, maybe 5 years old. It showed my father meeting with a man in what looked like a private airport hangar. I recognized the man, Julian Thorne, the IRS chief auditor who'd died of a heart attack a decade ago. Attached to the photograph was a coroner's report and a handwritten note from Thomas. Thorne was investigating Williams' offshore accounts, found evidence of $2.3 billion in tax fraud, died 3 days before scheduled testimony. Official cause, cardiac arrest. Actual cause, see video file TH-2014-07. There's video? I asked. David moved to the standalone computer and woke it up. The desktop showed a folder structure meticulously organized by year and subject. He clicked on the folder labeled Thorne. The video was grainy, black and white, clearly from a security camera. It showed a parking garage. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. A man walked toward his car, Julian Thorne carrying a briefcase. He looked tired, distracted. From the shadows, another man appeared. I recognized him immediately. Anderson, Williams' risk management specialist. The man currently holding Sarah's son hostage. In the video, Anderson approached Thorne quickly, professionally. They exchanged words. No audio, but Thorne looked confused, not threatened. Then Anderson moved with sudden violence, injecting something into Thorne's neck. Thorne collapsed. Anderson caught him, eased him to the ground, positioned him carefully, placed a pill bottle in his hand, arranged the scene to look like a man who'd taken his heart medication and collapsed. Then Anderson walked away, disappearing into the shadows as efficiently as he'd appeared. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "That's murder. That's premeditated murder on video." David fast-forwarded. The timestamp on the file shows it was downloaded from a parking garage security server. Thomas must have hacked it, copied it before it could be erased. "Is there more?" I asked. David pulled up another folder. "There are 6 videos, 6 different people. All investigated Williams' companies or threatened his interests. All died in apparent accidents or natural causes. All actually murdered by Anderson." My stomach turned. This wasn't just financial fraud. This was a pattern of elimination spanning decades. "Can we use this?" Sarah was already thinking like a journalist. "Is it admissible?" "In court? Maybe not without proper chain of custody." David opened another filing cabinet. "But Thomas documented everything. Affidavits from the security companies confirming the footage is authentic. Timestamps verified by multiple independent sources. Expert analysis of the injection technique showing it consistent with rapid-acting cardiac drugs." He pulled out a thick binder. "And this, payment records, money wired from Williams' accounts to Anderson's shell companies. The same pattern every time. Investigation opens, threat identified, payment made, target dies, problem solved." I thought about my mother, about Catherine driving home from Thomas's Island, going back to Boston because William had used me as bait, about her car going off that bridge on a clear, dry night. "My mother," I said quietly. "Is she in here?" David's face was grim. He opened a different cabinet, pulled out a folder marked Catherine Harper, 2010. Inside was everything. The accident report, the toxicology results, photographs of the bridge, the car, and Thomas's investigation, weather records showing no ice, mechanical inspection reports showing the brakes were recently serviced and perfect, witness statements from people who'd seen a van following Catherine's car, and a payment record. $50,000 wired to Anderson's account on December 14, 2010. Catherine died December 15, 2010. "He killed her," I said. Not a question, a statement of fact. William had Anderson kill my mother. Thomas believed so. He couldn't prove it conclusively. The car was destroyed too quickly, the toxicology report sealed, but the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. David closed the folder gently. I'm sorry, Grace. I took the folder, held it against my chest. 15 years of wondering, of guilt, of believing the lie that she'd been weak. She hadn't been weak. She'd been murdered. The grief was there, but underneath it was something colder, harder, a rage so pure it felt like clarity. Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the screen. It's Anderson again. Don't answer, I said. Let it go to voicemail. It rang 4 times, then stopped. 30 seconds later, a text arrived. Time's up, Ms. Mitchell. We're done negotiating. You have until 6 a.m. Bring the drive or Eli dies. They were panicking, accelerating the timeline, which meant they knew something was happening. My phone buzzed. Rebecca's number. I answered. Grace, whatever you're doing, do it fast. William just filed an emergency injunction in Boston. Judge Harriman signed it 20 minutes ago. It authorizes his security team to forcibly extract you from the island for psychiatric evaluation. And she paused. My office was just broken into. They took my computer. Everything we've been working on, all our strategy, it's compromised. Rebecca, are you safe? For now. But Grace, there's something else. A man contacted me this morning, wouldn't give his name, but he had information about Catherine's accident. He said there's a witness, someone who saw what happened that night and is ready to talk. My heart jumped. Who? The mechanic who serviced her car. He's been in hiding for 15 years, terrified of William, but he said when he sees the Harper Empire falling, he'll come forward. He said, Rebecca's voice dropped. He said he was paid to sabotage the brakes, paid by Anderson, and he kept the receipt. Where is he? Protection, FBI safe house. The agent I've been working with convinced him to come in, but he won't testify unless there's an active investigation. He needs immunity, witness protection, the full package. Then we give him an investigation, I said. I looked at the video of Thorne's murder, at the files documenting decades of crimes. Rebecca, I need you to contact the FBI. Tell them I have evidence of multiple homicides connected to William Harper. Tell them I have video evidence of premeditated murder. Tell them if they want it, they need to move now. Grace, this will put a target on your back. William will. He already has. There's nothing left to lose. Make the call. I hung up and turned to David. How long to copy everything in this vault to encrypted cloud storage? 40 minutes if I use all available bandwidth. But Grace, if we upload, William's people might detect it. They're monitoring for exactly this kind of activity. Let them detect it. I want them to know. I want William to understand that the evidence is out there, backed up, beyond his reach. Sarah was staring at the murder video, her journalist's mind working. Grace, if we release this, if we go public, it's not just evidence anymore. It's a story, the biggest story of the decade. Media titan exposed as serial killer, his empire built on blood. Can you write it? I asked. I can have it ready in 3 hours. Then write it, but don't publish yet. Not until I say. Why wait? Because I'm going to give William one chance to do the right thing. One opportunity to save Eli and turn himself in. I picked up the glass house token. And if he refuses, we burn his empire to the ground and make sure the whole world watches. David had already started the upload process. Progress bar, 0% of 847 gigabytes. This is going to take a while. My phone rang. Unknown number. I had a feeling I knew who it was. I answered. Hello, Father. William's voice was cold, controlled. Grace, we need to talk. I agree. Face to face. That's not possible. You're unstable. You need help. If you come home willingly, I'm not coming home. Ever. But you're welcome to visit. In fact, I insist. Silence. Then. You're playing a dangerous game. I learned from the best. You taught me that weakness is death. That power is everything. That family is just another word for leverage. I looked at Catherine's folder. You taught me well, Father. Maybe too well. What do you want? Justice. For Mom. For Julian Thorne, for everyone you've destroyed. But I'll settle for a trade. What kind of trade? Sarah Mitchell's son, Eli. You release him immediately, unharmed, to FBI custody. In exchange, I don't upload the contents of Thomas's vault to every news organization in the world. Another silence. You're bluffing. You don't have anything. I have video of Anderson murdering Julian Thorne. I have payment records connecting you to 6 other murders. I have 30 years of financial fraud documentation. I have the mechanic who sabotaged Mom's car ready to testify. And I have something else, something Thomas built that you've forgotten about. What? The Glass House Protocol. You remember it, don't you? The system Thomas designed to manage your offshore accounts. The one with the back door. The kill switch. The silence this time was absolute. I could almost hear his mind racing, calculating. You're lying, he said, but his voice had changed. Fear, barely controlled. Am I? Thomas gave me the token. Right now, I'm holding it. One button press and every account freezes. Every transaction gets flagged. Every dollar you've hidden for 30 years becomes visible to the IRS, the SEC, the DOJ. All of it simultaneously, irreversibly. You'd destroy your own inheritance. I don't want your inheritance. I want you in prison. Grace, listen to me. No, you listen. You're going to call Anderson. You're going to tell him to release Eli Mitchell unharmed to the FBI. You're going to do it in the next 10 minutes, and then you're going to get on your private jet and fly to this island, alone. We're going to have a conversation, face to face, father to daughter. And if I refuse, then I press the button. I release the files. I burn your empire to ash and salt the earth where it stood. Your choice. You have 10 minutes. I hung up. Sarah was staring at me. You just declared war on William Harper. No, I said, looking at the evidence surrounding us. My mother declared war 15 years ago. I'm just finishing it. 8 minutes later, Sarah's phone rang. Not Anderson, a different number. She answered, put it on speaker. Mom? Eli's voice, shaking with relief. Mom, they just let me out. I'm at some FBI field office in Newark. They said you called them? That I'm in protective custody? Sarah's legs gave out. She sat heavily in a chair, tears streaming down her face. You're safe? You're really safe? I'm safe, confused as hell, but safe. Mom, what's going on? I'll explain everything. Just stay where you are. Don't leave. Don't talk to anyone except the FBI. I'll be there as soon as I can. She hung up and looked at me. How did you? I told William the truth, that he had a choice, save one innocent kid or lose everything. I looked at the upload progress, 34%. He chose the kid, which means he's more afraid of the Glass House Protocol than I thought. David was monitoring multiple feeds. We have incoming, helicopter, civilian registration approaching from the south. That was fast, Sarah said. He was probably already in the air when I called. Probably flew to Portland when he realized where I was. I walked to the security monitors. He's coming to negotiate, or to kill me. Maybe both. Grace, this is insane. You can't face him alone. I won't be alone. You'll be here. David will be here. Rebecca's coordinating with the FBI. And I looked at the cameras recording everything. The whole world is going to be watching. Sarah understood immediately. You want to broadcast this. Every second, live stream, multiple platforms. No editing, no cutting, just raw footage of William Harper trying to talk his daughter into covering up murder. He'll never admit anything on camera. He doesn't have to. I just need him to be here on this island when the FBI arrives. I need him trapped. The helicopter was visible now through the windows. A sleek Sikorsky, black and silver, descending toward the south lawn. Through the cameras, I watched it land. The rotors hadn't even stopped when the door opened. William Harper stepped out. He was alone, just as I'd demanded. He wore a navy cashmere coat over an expensive suit, his silver hair perfect despite the rotor wash. He looked calm, collected, like a man arriving for a business meeting rather than a confrontation with the daughter he'd tried to destroy. He walked toward the main entrance with steady, measured steps, not hurrying, not afraid. David's hand moved toward the weapon locker. Grace. No weapons, I said. This ends with words and evidence, not bullets. Your call, but I'm staying close. I walked through the castle to the great hall, where the empty frames watched from the walls. Sarah followed, camera in hand, already streaming to her secure servers. David took a position near the door, visible but not threatening. The front door opened. William stepped inside, brushing snow from his shoulders. He looked around the hall, taking in the empty frames, the stark architecture, the fortress Thomas had built. His eyes found mine. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Father and daughter, Titan and exile. The man who'd given me life, and the woman who'd learned to live without him. Grace, he said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. You look tired. I am tired. Tired of lies. Tired of fear. Tired of pretending. He moved further into the room, his movements careful, controlled. This doesn't have to end badly. We can still find a solution. You're my daughter. I love you. The words should have hurt. Maybe a week ago they would have, but standing here in Catherine's sanctuary, surrounded by evidence of his crimes, they just sounded hollow. You don't know what love is, I said. You know what possession is, what control is, but love? No. That's the illness talking. Grace, you're not well. Let me help you. I'm not sick, Father. I'm just not blind anymore. He sighed, a sound of performative patience. Thomas poisoned your mind. He was always jealous of me, of what I built. He filled your head with paranoid fantasies. Is Julian Thorne a fantasy? I asked. Is the video of Anderson murdering him in a parking garage a fantasy? Are the 6 other people you had killed fantasies? His face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I don't know what you think you've found, but I found everything. Thomas documented everything. 30 years of crimes, murder, fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. It's all here, all backed up, all ready to be released. You can't prove any of it. I can prove all of it, and so can the FBI. They're on their way right now. Should be here in... I looked at my watch. About 40 minutes. Coast Guard is escorting them. They have the warrant. They have the probable cause. And they have a witness ready to testify that you paid to have my mother killed. Finally, the mask cracked. William's face hardened. The gentle, concerned father vanished, replaced by the man I'd always known underneath, cold, calculating, ruthless. Your mother was weak, he said. She was going to destroy everything I built. Everything our family built. She was going to take you away from me, poison you against me. I couldn't allow it. The admission hung in the air. Sarah's camera was recording. The live stream had thousands of viewers now, watching in real time. So you killed her, I said. I eliminated a threat. There's a difference. She was my mother. She was a liability. He stepped closer. Grace, you need to understand. Everything I did to protect you, to protect our legacy. Your mother would have destroyed that. She would have taken half the empire in the divorce, exposed us to legal prosecution, ruined everything. So you chose money over her life. I chose survival. I chose power, because power is the only thing that matters, the only thing that protects us from a world that wants to tear us down. His voice dropped, became almost pleading. Grace, I know you understand this. You're my daughter. You have my mind, my instincts. That's why you refused to sign the Briarstone deal. That's why you're standing here now instead of cowering. You're a Harper. Act like one. And there it was, the core of him. The belief that cruelty and strength were the same thing. That love was weakness and murder was just business. You're right about one thing, I said. I am my mother's daughter, and I'm going to finish what she started. His face changed. The pleading vanished, replaced by cold fury. You're making a mistake. No, you made the mistake. You thought you could kill Mom and erase her. You thought you could exile me and I'd disappear. You thought you were so powerful that no one could touch you. I picked up my phone, showed him the screen. But you forgot that power isn't just money and influence. Power is truth, and the truth is going viral right now." He looked at the phone, at the live stream counter. 47,000 viewers and climbing, at the comments flooding in from around the world. "Turn it off," he said. "No." "Grace, turn it off right now, or what? You'll have Anderson kill me too? He's in FBI custody by now, father. They picked him up 30 minutes ago when he released Eli Mitchell. He's singing like a canary, trying to cut a deal, offering to testify against you." William's face went white. Anderson wouldn't. Anderson is a professional. He knows when a ship is sinking. He's not going down with you." For the first time in my life, I saw my father look genuinely afraid. Not angry, not calculating, just scared. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to tell the truth, on camera, to confess what you did to my mother." "I'll never." "Then you'll go to prison without the dignity of honesty. The FBI is coming. The evidence is uploading. The story is breaking. Your empire is falling. The only choice you have left is whether you face it like a man or like a coward." Outside, a new sound cut through the wind, the heavy thrum of multiple helicopter rotors. Through the windows, I could see them. 3 large Coast Guard helicopters, marked with FBI insignia, descending toward the island. William saw them too. He turned back to me, and for just a moment, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Resignation. "You don't understand what you're destroying," he said quietly. "The Harper Empire employs thousands of people. It moves billions in commerce. It influences policy, shapes markets. You're not just taking me down. You're dismantling an ecosystem." "I understand perfectly," I said. "I'm not destroying an ecosystem. I'm destroying a machine that runs on blood and fear, and I'm going to build something better in its place." The helicopters touched down. FBI agents in tactical gear poured out, surrounding the castle. William looked at me one last time. In that moment, I saw him finally see me. Not as a disappointing daughter, not as a liability, not as a piece to move on his board. Just as the person who'd beaten him. "You're more like me than you think," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm more like Mom, and that's why I won." The front door opened. FBI agents entered, weapons drawn, shouting commands. William raised his hands slowly, the gesture of a man who knew when the game was over. "William Harper," the lead agent said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of tax fraud and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." I watched as they cuffed him, as they read him his rights, as they led him out of the castle toward the waiting helicopters. He didn't look back. Sarah lowered her camera. "It's over." "No," I said, watching the helicopters lift off, taking William Harper away from his empire forever. "It's just beginning." 3 months later, I stood at the edge of the terrace at Carenhold Castle, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. The ocean was calm today, rolling in gentle swells that caught the morning light like scattered diamonds. The empty frames were gone. I'd spent the last weeks filling them, not with portraits of dead Harpers, but with photographs of the people who'd helped me survive. Rebecca Walsh, fierce and brilliant. Sarah Mitchell, who'd turned the whole story into a 3-part series that won her a 4th Pulitzer. David Stone, who'd stayed on as head of security and become something like family. And Catherine. My mother's face appeared in several frames now, candid photos I'd found in Thomas's archives, showing her laughing, working, living. Not the posed, perfect images William had preferred, but real moments of a real woman who'd been braver than anyone knew. The trials were ongoing. William faced federal charges in 3 jurisdictions. Anderson had flipped, testifying in exchange for a reduced sentence. The mechanic who'd sabotaged Catherine's brakes had come forward, his testimony devastating. Judge Harriman had been forced to resign. 5 other officials in William's pocket had been indicted. The Harper Empire had collapsed. The stock plummeted. The board had voted unanimously to remove William's name from every building, every foundation, every piece of corporate literature. Harper Media Group was now Atlantic Media Group. Harper Logistics was Summit Logistics. The family name, once a mark of power, had become toxic, and I'd inherited what was left. Not because I wanted it, but because someone needed to salvage what could be saved. The legitimate businesses, the honest employees, the parts of the empire that hadn't been built on blood. It was overwhelming, exhausting. Sometimes I wanted to walk away from all of it, let it burn, start over with nothing. But then I'd think about Catherine, about her letter, about finishing what she'd started. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Verdict in. Guilty on all counts. Life without parole. I stood there, feeling nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of completion. Sarah emerged from the castle, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one and stood beside me, looking out at the water. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know. Should I feel happy?" "You should feel however you feel. There's no right answer." "He's my father. Even after everything, he's still my father. He's a man who chose power over people, who chose money over love, who killed your mother." Sarah sipped her coffee. "He's also the man who's going to die in prison. Both things can be true." We stood in silence for a while. Then Sarah said, "I'm heading back to Boston this afternoon. Eli's thesis defense is tomorrow. You should come." "I can't. I have meetings with the board. We're restructuring the foundation, trying to actually do the charitable work it was supposed to be doing." "Next month, then. Come visit. I want you to meet him properly, and I want to thank you again for—" "You don't need to thank me. We saved each other." She smiled. "Yeah, I guess we did." After Sarah left, I walked through the castle, through the rooms that had become familiar over these months. Thomas's vault was empty now. All the evidence had been cataloged and secured by the FBI. But I'd kept Catherine's room exactly as it was. Sometimes I'd sit at her desk, reading through her notes, feeling close to her in a way I never had when she was alive, or when I'd thought she was gone. I found David in the security center, monitoring feeds that showed a quiet island on a quiet morning. "Coast Guard called," he said. "They're doing another sweep of the perimeter, making sure no enterprising journalists try to sneak up on you. Let them come. I'm done hiding." He looked at me. "You've changed." "Have I?" 3 months ago you were running, scared, alone. Now you're running a billion-dollar restructuring, testifying in federal court, and planning a new charitable foundation. Yeah, you've changed. Is it a good change? Catherine would be proud. Thomas, too, wherever he is. I thought about that. About my great-uncle who'd built this fortress, who'd spent 5 years collecting evidence, who'd disappeared into whatever life he'd created after faking his death. "Do you think he's watching?" I asked. "Thomas? Do you think he knows?" "If he's alive, he knows. And if he's dead—" David shrugged. "Well, he built something that outlasted him. That's a kind of immortality." My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I got dozens of calls a day now from reporters, lawyers, people wanting pieces of the story or the money or both. But something made me answer. "Grace Harper," I said. Silence. Then a voice I didn't recognize, electronically distorted. "You did well." My heart jumped. "Thomas?" "Names don't matter. What matters is you finished it. You finished what Catherine started, what I couldn't finish alone." "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere William's ghost can't reach. That's all you need to know." "Will I ever see you?" A pause. "Maybe. Someday. When enough time has passed. When it's safe." Another pause. "Grace, your mother would be so proud. You became the weapon she knew you could be. But remember, weapons can build as well as destroy. Don't let anger consume you. Use it. Channel it. Build something better." "I'm trying." "I know. I'm watching. And I'll keep watching. If you ever need help, if the vultures circle too close, I'll be there. You're not alone." "Thank you. For everything. For the island, for the evidence, for— I didn't do it for you. I did it for Catherine. But you—" His distorted voice carried something like warmth. "You exceeded every hope I had. You're stronger than either of us ever were." The line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling the weight of the last 3 months. The trials. The revelations. The empire crumbling, the fortress standing. David looked at me questioningly. "Thomas," I said, "he's alive. He's watching." "Good. You need someone watching your back. This isn't over, Grace. William's conviction won't stop everyone who worked for him. Some of them are still out there. Let them come. I'm not the scared girl who walked out of that dinner anymore." "No," David agreed. "You're not." I walked back out to the terrace. The sun was fully up now, burning away the morning mist, revealing the ocean in all its dangerous beauty. The Harper name was ruined. The empire was scattered. My father would die in a cell, and I'd spend years untangling the mess he'd created. But I was free, free of his expectations, free of his manipulation, free of the lie that cruelty and love were the same thing. I thought about Catherine's letter, about being made of iron and fire, about being the only thing William truly feared. She'd been right. I was stronger than I knew, braver than I believed, and I'd become exactly the person who could end this. The name Harper belonged to me now, and I was going to make it mean something different, something honest, something clean, something my mother would have been proud of. I looked out at the Atlantic, at the vast possibility of the horizon, and allowed myself something I hadn't felt in months: hope. The war was over. The fortress had held, and I was still standing, not as my father's daughter, not as my mother's victim, just as Grace Harper, the last heir, the one who'd survived, and the one who'd learned that sometimes the only way to inherit your life is to be expelled from someone else's.